On my 8th birthday, I received from my mother a brand new Nintendo DS Lite and a copy of Pokemon Diamond version, and suddenly, my first core memory was created. My entire life up until this very moment was comparatively insignificant. I had played video games before on the GameCube, I had received for a previous birthday, but for the longest time had no memory card for the GameCube, so I would just load up Mario Kart Double Dash or the Rocket Power game, fool around until I got bored and basically went back to watching Pokemon movies or whatever I was into before the DS came out. As a split home child who was required to go back and forth between my parents' houses throughout the week, it was always difficult to get a good groove going in a console game, not to mention the lack of memory cards my parents didn't think I needed, but when the DS came out, the entire game changed, and so did my brain chemistry seemingly for the rest of my life. The first Nintendo DS I got was pure white, and very soon wasn't because I kept that thing on me like it was protection, and in a way it was protection from the boredom that comes with being too young for your parents to just leave you at home, but old enough that they will take you everywhere with them and expect you to entertain yourself through 3 2-hour sessions of TJ Maxx, Ross, and Marshalls back to back. Gone were the days of hiding in the clothes racks and jump scaring random middle-aged women, and come had the days of just sitting in the bed of the shopping cart getting a jump start on my inevitable gamer neckification. I had a cousin that was my age that I was very close with around the time of my life, and one of the most horrific memories I had of playing Pokemon Diamond was created by him. We had both completed the game and were trying to fill out our Pokedexes when I had the bright idea that I would send him my Electabuzz with the Electivizer so that he could register it in his dex and trade it back to me so that I could keep it since it was mine, and was going to do the same with Magmar as well, but the moment I sent him my Pokemon, he closed his console and said that he was just going to keep it and not trade it back to me, and left the room to do something, but I just went back on both of our consoles since he left the room with his DS unattended like a dummy when he left, and I just traded it back to myself. This playthrough of Pokemon Diamond, I tried to focus on team building to prepare myself for the Elite Four and Cynthia, as Cynthia is one of the most intimidating bosses in the entire game series except for Red himself. I also think Nemona from the most recent Pokemon games could have been something similar if they didn't make her team so piss poor. For my player avatar, I went ahead and picked the female character because Lucas is probably the least interesting looking protagonist in the pixel era of Pokemon. And don't get me started on the 3D era because those protagonist designs are some of the worst at base unless you customize them, but again, a little off track here. The game opens with a warning on the local news of a rumored red Gyarados being tailed by an exploration team of assumedly Pokemon surveyors. The report states that despite their efforts, the Gyarados eluded their detection and remains an unknown anomaly, which almost makes me wonder if the events of this game take place around the same time as the events of the second generation of the series, Silver and Gold, where a red Gyarados being controlled by Team Rocket through radio waves is wreaking havoc in the Johto region. This news report is also something that we haven't really seen in past or future games, which is strange because the report itself isn't very important to the story, but the report being in the opening of the game gives our protagonist and her best friend Barry an ample reason to head out on their own into the wild in search of adventure and relationships with Pokemon. We head downstairs to talk to the mother of this game, who is slightly less bland than the other mothers, as later on we will find out a bit more about her personal life, but right now she's just as transparent a character as the mothers in this series have always been. She tells you that Barry was just by and he was looking for you, so you set off to their house where you first get to witness this character's high energy antics for the first time as he runs into you, exiting his home as you're about to enter. Runs right past you, edging you on for a race to the lake, and suddenly remembering that he forgot something and going right back inside where you find him in his room muttering to you about some sort of self-imposed bet he's opting you into and running right out again waiting for you on the outskirts of town. Barry is my all-time favorite rival of the Pokemon games to date, and honestly, nobody really comes close besides Sharon and Blue himself. I would also throw Hop in that hat as well, just personally. I think he's a really cool protagonist, having his brother as the champion of the region and all. I believe Barry is the best protagonist of the Pokemon games because he was the first real rival that was actually just your hometown friend. That's just extremely energetic and competitive, always being one step ahead of you and beating all the gyms first and challenging you in between almost every single gym challenge you take. Also, before people start telling me that the first friendly rival was in 3rd gen Pokemon, I don't count May or Wally. They're both just half-assed versions of someone who could have been a whole antagonist, and they both bore me to death. The means in which you receive your first Pokemon in this game is also rather unique, as you just kind of steal them from the professor's trunk that he left at the lake on accident, desperately trying to protect yourself from some feral Starly. The starters for this game are also some of the best of all time. Piplup the penguin evolves into a water-still powerhouse. Chimchar, one of the few early ape-like Pokemon, turns into the fast and strong Infernape, and Turtwig grows into the mountain that is Torterra. Chimchar was also my first choice as a kid, because who doesn't love a flaming monkey, but for this go around I was trying to focus on balancing my team for the best, and that led to Turtwig being my main man this go around the sun. We catch up with Professor Rowan, who appears to be the eldest of all the game professors, already being completely gray. He forgives Barry and I for taking his Pokemon as we returned his suitcase, and even lets us borrow the guy until we can meet him at his lab later on for some sort of gift he promised. Heading over to Professor Rowan, dealing with a couple local Bidoofs, Rowan gifts us with the Pokemon we took from his suitcase, saying we can keep it, and asks me to name it in order to build an endearing connection, so I named him Cheeks after one of my friends, and I realized I spelled the word cheeks wrong here initially and decided to leave it like that as I felt it added character. Lucas shows us around town in a traditional tour of the facilities important to a Pokemon trainer, and tells us to let Mom know that we have been asked to embark on an adventure to fill the Pokedex by Professor Rowan, and she lets us wander off into the forest, never to return again. Returning to Lucas, we have the traditional catching wild Pokemon tutorial that takes much too long and seems purposefully slow. After that circus, I run into the grass and catch the first Starly I see, because Staraptor is one of the most badass bird Pokemon out there, right next to my favorite one being Big Man Talonflame. Staraptor learned Close Combat and Brave Bird just in time for the Elite Four, and that's going to be crucial for our war effort. I asked my girlfriend, who was right next to me at the time I was playing, what I should name the little guy, and she said Ravi because it sounded nice, so Ravi it was. In the next town, Lucas sees how many Pokemon we have and lets us know that in order to have a successful journey filling the Pokedex and tackling the gym challenge, we're going to need a full team of 6 eventually, and saunters off, letting you know Barry is over at the trainer school reading up on some battle tips waiting for you. Once you get there, he spazzes out and tells you he's going to go ahead to challenge the gym leader ASAP and barges out of the room. Ever since Generation 2, Pokemon had been adding little gimmicky items that resemble phones to aid players on their journey, and Generation 4 was where it really picked up with the Poketch. I remember as a kid I didn't have a calculator, or rather I was probably just too lazy to get up and ask my parents if we had one, and I would sit up doing my math homework with the help of the in-game calculator on the Poketch. In retrospect, the same feeling the Poketch gives you of utility with the in-game devices has never felt quite the same as it did in 4th gen. In order to receive this wonderful device, you have to answer questions from these goofy little clown guys dotted around the city, whose locations are probably memorized by most long-term fans by now, as I remember finding them giving me a lot of trouble as a kid. The 3 questions themselves are just super basic Pokemon trivia, and the answers to all of them are all just yes, all 3 times. I had no use for most of the functions of the watch at this time, so for the duration of this playthrough I left it on the team status screen so that you could see the crew at any point in the game. Next up is the first trainer battle, which is kind of unique in this game, having it not only be after the first city, but also having your rival use 2 Pokemon right off the bat that are above base level, showing that he has been doing quite a bit of training since you last saw him. His Starly is higher level than mine at this point, but I decided to honor battle him and still ended up on top as he wasted most of his turns using Growl. Next up he has his Chimchar, which has an advantage against my Turtwig being a fire type, but despite the type advantage, I still decided to use my starter against his and came out on top. Next up was the first gym that is run by Rourke, which is a rock fossil themed gym that is the top of my personal favorites list of first gyms. I think seeing it in the anime as a kid got me really hyped up to challenge it myself in the game, as I remember the arc where Ash challenges him being pretty cool. I'm just looking at my notes right now. I wrote Ash as ass on accident, and that's why I giggled. When we get to the gym, Barry is standing there in front of the door, barring us from entering, letting you know that since he got here first and received his badge already, the gym leader, Rourke, already took off and he won't move until you find him. Rourke is of course hard at work back down in the mine, suggesting that maybe being the lowest ranked gym leader doesn't pay the bills enough to be a single income, because who in their right mind would work 2 jobs for the fun of it? And no, I won't entertain people saying they do it because they like it, to stay busy, because you have problems and so does the economy. When you get down there, he says he's just breaking rocks for people's safety, which I don't believe, and he runs back off to the gym so that we can finally challenge him. Rourke was a cakewalk since I had been challenging every single possible trainer I had seen at the time, because I'm an XP whore, and I used the opportunity to play switch training with my Starly since Tackle wasn't going to get us anywhere on him. I basically rinsed and repeated this process with both his Geodude and his Onix, but when his Craniodose finally came out, it actually gave me a bit of trouble even though I had the type level advantage with Cheeks. Luckily, Absorb kept me alive and made him dead, winning me my first gym badge. Side note, did any of you have a family member or friend at school that would get super upset when you would say that Pokemon were being killed instead of fainting? My first stepmother had a nephew that acted like he was this badass outdoorsy roughhouser, but would throw a fit and start crying every time I referred to fainting as dying, because his mom was really strict and wouldn't let him play the game if she thought there was death in the game, and it always gave me a good tickle to mess with him. Returning to the city that we received the Poketch in that leads the way to the next town, we find Lucas and Professor Rowan being harassed by some Team Galactic members, asking him to relinquish all of his research on Pokemon and team up with Lucas to take them down. Lucas has Piplup, which I think is pretty cool since no Pokemon got abandoned at the lab since we didn't pick it this time. After the battle, the grunts run off, spouting something about benevolence, and it's onward to the mission. I decided that since I already had one classic Gen 4 powerhouse, I would offset it with my next partner, who had always been a bit of a laughingstock in the Pokemon community, especially as pertains to its original generation. Bidoof and B-Barrel have been called a lot of things throughout the years, but no name was more prominent than the best HM slave in the game. Everyone has a story of keeping a poor underleveled B-Barrel in their 6th or 5th slot of their party whose only purpose was to get you through caves and water. I personally wanted to change this narrative and captured this Bidoof and named him Boof, because I thought that would be cute for him. Next up is the beautiful city of flowers that I sort of wish had a more significant in this game. It's kind of just a passover town to introduce the first Team Galactic base nearby. All of the dancing flowers and windmills spread out between here and the Valley Windworks really set the vibe right for this place. We meet a girl that says her dad's been held hostage at the Windworks and try to get in but are stopped since we don't have the key. We then have to fight some more grunts up on the Flower Hill to save the man that lives up there, and are rewarded with both the key to the Windworks and a jar of honey that could net us some cool Pokemon from the yellow trees if we wanted. I remember as a kid I would religiously check this thing just so that I could catch a Munchlax, since that's my favorite baby Pokemon. The inside of the Windworks has a few weak grunts and one admin being Mars. I've had trouble with Mars in the past for some reason because of the tankiness of her Perugly, and this time it was surprisingly just the same, with me actually taking the L on my first attempt. Second attempt though, I managed to crit with my Razor Leaf at a critical moment and took the victory, saving the scientist so that he could return to his daughter. Onward is the forest where we meet Cheryl, who is a long green-haired boy who is looking for passage through the forest but is afraid to go alone since he heard that there's a sinister group called Team Galactic skulking about and being the Chad trainer we are, knowing Team Galactic is no threat at all to us, take him through the forest with us as he offered to keep us healed up the whole way through, which I always thought was pretty cool. I love the forest since it's all double battles all the time, as long as you have Cheryl there, and you can take advantage of his generosity using this opportunity to grind without having to go all the way back to the Pokemon Center whenever your Pokemon is injured. This forest is also the home of the old chateau, which houses the not so legendary these days Rotom that I considered adding to the team, but I remembered it might require some research as it's kind of a special timed event that happens on certain days of the week. In the next town there is a buttload of things to do and get. Jumping right in, we get to meet the badass herself, Cynthia, for the first time, recognizing us as one of Rowan's pupils by the Pokedex and telling us that she's here on business researching ancient Pokemon and gives us the HM for Cut, which I end up reluctantly teaching to Cheeks. Next up was the gym challenge with the grass-type gym leader. She lets us know from the jump that in order to fight her, we're going to have to find every trainer in her gym and beat them. This leader was always cool because she's one of the few gym leaders that use the starter typing for their gym and actually use the corresponding starter Pokemon. I mean, just imagine if Misty had Squirtle or Blaine had Charizard. I know starter Pokemon are supposed to be rare, but if anyone would have one, it would be a gym leader. I bodied her Cherubi with Cheeks, taking minimal damage, and lose the poor boy to a poison sting from Roserade, forcing me to send out Ravy, and the rest was history as Roserade and Turtwig are one-shot by my wing attack. Last thing we have to do here is get the bicycle and defeat the totally not evil spikes along the side hidden Team Rocket base to the north where you challenge Commander Jupiter. Jupiter has a similar team to Mars, but just replacing the tanky Perugly with another tankier Skunk Tank. Awkward types like Poison this early in the game always trip me up, and I ended up losing once to this battle as well since I just couldn't kill the damn skunk, but managed to bring her down the second time, making sure to build up Cheeks with Curse before taking out the Zubat. Free bicycle acquired and cycling road bombed, I head through the mountain tunnel to meet Team Galactic leader Cyrus for the first time in passing, and now that I think about it, he was probably walking past us to go deal with Jupiter's issue back in the previous town. He tells us for some reason that Mount Coronet is said to be where the Sinnoh region all began and starts spouting all sorts of nonsense about strife and human weakness, dashing off, not taking any questions. On the other side of the cave is Hearthome City, which houses the 5th gym that's a bit out of our league at the moment. Upon entering the city, we're greeted by a Baneri and a trainer that teaches us a little about natures, and we spot the town's gym leader peeking into the contest hall where we find out our mom is actually super into them giving us our own resources to start doing the contests ourselves. With nothing really left to do here but do contests, we split off to find the 3rd gym and run into Barry on the way out, who says that since I'm a trainer now, I have to fight him whenever he asks. This time around, I'm outnumbered by his team that consists of 4 Pokemon where I'm still sporting 3. He still has Starly for some reason, which is unevolved at level 19, that fought bravely against Boof, sending out his Roselia next that didn't stand a chance up to Ravi. Up next was a Buizel, which I thought was interesting since Ash's Buizel from the anime was the star of the show, but from then on, Ravi dominated the rest of the match, cleaning up from the starter Monferno himself with ease. Just about every Pixel Pokemon game has a creepy graveyard tower with a bunch of random angry trainers inside mourning their lost Pokemon, and though the area is optional, I wanted to fight every trainer I could for experience. The nearby village is called Salacian Town, which is kind of just a generic farming town on the surface, but hosts the Pokemon daycare as well as the unknown ruins in the caves nearby, which I completely forgot to go through this playthrough. I don't talk about normal trainers much in this game, but I do think there are 2 that deserve an honorable mention at the gate of the next town in the rain. Ace Trainer Dennis and Maya are a duo that have given me tons of trouble back in the day as their Pokemon are super strong, and being Ace trainers seem to have a bit more of an advanced AI than the rest. These 2 have a Monferno, Glameow, Kadabra, and Gyarados between them and have been absolute walls to my playthroughs in the past, but this time, unfortunately for them, I was overleveled enough on my starter to take them down, though I was soloing the battle between with Cheeks at certain points. The next town is jam-packed with stuff as well, being the home of Team Galactic's main base of operations, the traditional big city shopping mall, and the third gym that's fighting type themed. This is the first gym in the game with an actual puzzle, having you work your way around the karate dudes training here, sliding around these floor sliders, creating a clear path down the middle to challenge gym leader Maylene. She starts off with Metatite, and since I knew Bidoof would get bodied in this battle due to type advantage, I led with him, nearly being able to drop Metatite himself if she didn't decide to swap out with Lucario and ruin my plan, killing Boof. I went in with Ravi thinking Aerial Ace would kill, but did way less damage than it should have, and his self-healing with a citrus berry didn't help my situation one bit, but I eventually came out on top with a clutch quick attack, taking down her signature Pokemon, and the rest also dropping to Ravi, earning us our third gym badge. Exiting the gym, Lucas is waiting for us to ask us to help him get some stuff back that Team Galactic stole from him, meeting him by the Team Galactic warehouse. We double battle these grunts, getting Lucas's Pokemon back in a jiffy. Moseying down past the beach, we get to the city with the fourth gym leader, the iconic Crasher Wake, which is also home to the second worst Savari zone I've ever seen, right behind the third gen one. Just absolute trash all around. Despite this though, we do end up going in there to get Skorupi to be the next official member of our team, and I named him Berto. Crasher Wake's gym is nothing to write home about, just a linear path with some buttons to press. Wake himself starts right off the bat with a whole Gyarados, scaring my poor Birdo back in the ball in favor of Boof, who took Gyarados down with Rollout, and the rest was history once Torterra came out and we earned our fourth gym badge of the game. Next up is yet another battle with our boy Barry, and for some odd reason he's still rocking with Starly unevolved, but to each his own. I take it down with Boof, also destroying his Roselia with Hyper Fang. I switched into Staraptor for Monferno and wiped out the rest of his team with Prejudice, as it was far too weak at this point in the game to pose a challenge. After the rival battle, I had to chase this sussy-ass Team Rocket member around the beach until he battled me, and our girl Cynthia is conveniently nearby trying to research the Great Lakes and ask a favor of us. Cynthia wants us to go help out a pack of Psyducks that are blocking the road to her hometown where her family lives with this medicine that she gives us. When we cure the headaches of the Psyduck pack, Cynthia waltzes on up and asks us yet another favor, to bring this old charm up to her grandmother in Celestic Town. The route up to Celestic Town was always a huge burden to go through because of the forced fog. The fog causes your Pokemon moves to hit seemingly a third of the time and can only be taken away with the HM for defog, which nobody wants to waste precious move slots on. When entering the town, we run into a woman outside of the plaza telling us that there's a mysterious man over by the ruins muttering to himself about bombs and such. Lo and behold, it's a Team Rocket grunt guarding the mouth of the cave that gets sent blasting off again. The old woman then approaches us, surprised that Cynthia entrusted us with the return of the old charm, and lets us know that she's actually Cynthia's grandmother. Upon entering the cave, we see a mural of the three guardian deities, Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. She tells us that the mural is a part of the creation myth of the Sinnoh region and gives us the HM for Surf, since according to her, Cynthia doesn't need it anymore. Exiting the ruins, we run into Cyrus yet again, who introduces himself to us this time and says he recognizes us from the cave at Mount Coronet. Tells us again he wants to create a world without strife, and for some reason thinks that if we discover anything about the legends of Sinnoh that we will tell him, and saunters off. I return to Hearthome City to finally challenge the 5th gym leader, who is a ghost type user. Her gym has a pick the right room or battle puzzle that I exploited to max out on experience from all the trainers here, and eventually made my way up to Fantina herself. She leads with a Drifblim and manages to take out my Birdo with no problem, and I ended up sending out Boof to possibly go for a rollout sweep, but after Drifblim was dealt with, he was pretty low health already, so for Miss Magius, I pulled out Ravy, who almost got the job done, if not for the Confusion Lock. Cheeks came out and cleaned up, but with the looming threat of a Gengar for the last Pokemon, I switched into Boof, who did a small sliver to his health, which was just enough for me to win with the crit from Cheeks' Razor Leaf that won me the match, because if I didn't hit that, I would have surely perished. Exiting the gym, Cynthia, seemingly obsessed with our journey, stops us yet again to thank us for our services to our hometown, scaring away the villainous Team Galactic. She lets us know that if we're going to stop this looming threat, we may have to study up a bit on what they're attempting, so she sends us to the library in Canaclave City. This town has sparked a good deal of strife with the Pokemon community because of the unfortunate circumstances that befell the mythical Pokemon Darkrai. Darkrai was one of the coolest Pokemon ever made at the time and was unfortunately locked behind an event that was only available for a limited time. This plagued my mind as a child because when you're 7 or 8 years old, it was kind of impossible to stay in the loop about these kinds of events, especially before every kid had an iPad. The best way to find out about these things when you were a kid was literally to have passed by or through Toys R Us or GameStop in the exact time period that they were advertising the dates for the event, which almost always only took place over the course of a single weekend. I get that this was an interesting way to interact with the fans and extend the lifeline of this game, but I think in the long run it just kind of caused a lot of disappointment in the people who couldn't access it. I wish that they just allowed the game to have some sort of in-game means of accessing this event, like how you can get Cresselia after beating the game just a few doors down in the same town. Passionate rant behind us. Despite this fact, I still love this town. It's one of the coolest in the game because that mystery exists, and the fact that that's not the only interesting thing about this town sort of makes up for it in a small way, though I think everyone wishes we could still catch Darkrai in this game. Crossing the bridge to the gym, we meet Barry once again, who is all hyped up about his gym challenge and requests to battle us almost immediately. He starts with his finely evolved Staravia and gets bodied by Boof's rollout, but once he sends in his Heracross, it's kaputs for Boof, and I get Birdo out there to finally start pulling his own weight. His Monferno is next, and I send out Ravy once again, who is proving to be the MVP of this team so far, being able to sweep most trainers I send him out to, and Barry was no exception. After this, I realized it was high time I added a new team member to the roster, so I ran into the nearby grass to catch me a Shellos. I named Shelly after Stan's sister in South Park because whenever I see Shellos, I start singing, "Shelly, Shelly." I ran into an evolved version shortly after, just about the same level, but I honestly enjoyed raising my Pokemon up from just babies. It makes me feel like I've imprinted on them and strengthens our bond. I wouldn't really call the 6th gym a puzzle. It's more like a weird maze that's sort of linear. You pretty much just have to keep using elevators and conveyors to get to the top, where you meet the Steel-type gym leader Byron, who also just so happens to be the first gym leader in the game, Rourke's father. This is a cool little tidbit of lore since they're kind of in similar lines of work and both use one of the awesome fossil Pokemon. He starts with Bronzor and puts Shelly to sleep, forcing me to switch out into Torterra so that I could possibly Leaf Blade him into Oblivion, but that didn't really work as planned, so I got Ravy out for close combat, but was a more costly switch-in than I anticipated, losing half of his health. The next Pokemon he sent out was Bastiodon, the still Triceratops Pokemon. Either way, I sent out Boof to clean him up with Surf and was on to a Steelix without too much trouble, even though he got a full restore out on me before I could kill him for the first time. For Steelix, I decided to send out Cheeks yet again to use his Earthquake to turn this gym upside down and win me my 6th gym badge. Before going to the library to catch up with the nerds, I went over to the Steel Island where you can get the only Riolu in the game from an egg to train up my team a bit. Even though I wasn't going to be using a Lucario on my team, I thought since the Pokemon in the tunnel were so high level at the time, it would be a good opportunity to train up the team, since Trainer Riley, who wants you to come through the tunnel with him for the same reasons Cheryl makes you go through the forest with him, will heal up your Pokemon after every encounter as well. So as long as you don't complete his objective, you can keep him under your wing to do unlimited training to your heart's content. After getting all of my Pokemon up to level 40 in the caves, I returned to the library to talk to these nerds, and it turns out everyone has been waiting on me this whole time. We find out that Barry never got his Pokedex even after all this time because he ran out of the lab to start his adventure so abruptly. The professor then explains that his focus on Pokemon research is evolution, and in order to further his research, he needs us all to go to the 3 lakes individually and try to identify the legendary Pokemon that reside there. Lucas is going to Lake Verity, Barry is going to Lake Acuity, and I'm assigned to Lake Valor. Suddenly a huge earthquake hits and everyone rushes outside, and a sailor comes up to us saying that apparently Lake Valor went kaboom and was the cause of the quake. For some reason, Rowan insists that us, an 11-year-old child, should still be the one to inspect the giant explosion alone, and says he and Lucas should be going to join me after they inspect Lake Acuity, but we all know that's never going to happen. I ran over to Lake Valor to see what the dealio was, and of course the place was swarming with Team Galactic grunts and tons of poor dying Magikarp. I think that this is the only place in all the mainline series games where the devs actually show you Pokemon dying right before your eyes. I always thought that that was kind of interesting. Inside the caves, we're challenged by Commander Saturn, who sends out a Kadabra against Birdo, who gets dealt with promptly, as does the rest of her pathetic 3-man team. After kicking her out, I head back to Lake Verity to help Rowan, since it was obvious at this point that Team Galactic was launching a full-on assault against the lakes. Here we save Rowan and Lucas from Commander Mars, whose team is nothing to write home about either, and move on to the long trek up Lake Acuity, where Barry must be holding back the enemy all by himself. The snowy area on the way to Lake Acuity in the town with the 7th gym leader is probably my favorite snowy area in any Pokemon game of all time. It's just so violently snowy, and the snow swallows you up every few steps, really giving you a sense of exploration, though it can be annoying sometimes, especially close to the rock climb guy's house. The only snowy area that compares for me is weirdly the one in Scarlet and Violet, where you can ride your legendary up the cliffs and jump off of them. It kind of reminds me of climbing mountains on your horse in Skyrim, but better. Along the way, I pick up the final member of our enclave, which is a Snover I named Edie after Pam's sister in the FX show Archer. The 7th gym of the game is probably the most difficult puzzle of almost any gym I've faced before. Basically, most of the gym is ice, and there are little stops spread throughout the sloping gym, and some of those stops are snowballs that need to be ran through at high speed in order to get past them, and it's a rather difficult mind game for me even now after I've done it so many times before. Once we slide through all the snowballs that block the path to the gym leader, we finally face the deadly ice-type leader, Candace. Her first Pokemon is Snorunt, who gets blasted out the arena instantly by Ravy, being followed by a Sneasel, who's also blasted away by Ravy's close combat. She then sent out a Bombasnow, who sadly went down to just one fly. I nearly one-shot her Medicham as well with Aerial Ace, but I think the attack decrease from using close combat prevented us from getting a full sweep with Ravy, forcing me to switch out to our new child Edie, who sadly was killed in the light of duty, since he wasn't up to par with the rest of the team just yet, forcing me to play detect tag with her for a bit with Shelly before he was consumed by my mud ball, finally earning us the second to last gym badge. We needed the badge before we could get to Barry at the lake, because the path up there requires that we use rock climb, which I decided to teach to my baby boy Boof. When I get there, the damage had already been done and Barry had been defeated by Commander Jupiter. Jupiter left as soon as she saw me because she knew she didn't want the smoke, and I went over to comfort my poor friend. With Team Galactic finally driven out of the 3 lakes, it was time to launch an all-out attack on their home base. I went to the warehouse to attempt access to the underground, where a grunt let me know very politely that one of his buddies in front of the main tower has the key to the door that would let me in. After snatching it up from him, I delved into the Galactic storage area to find the Galactic key card to let me into the main building. Once in, I worked my way up to the tower, eventually getting to the command room where Cyrus himself guarded the room to the captured legendary lake Pokemon. For some reason, he talks to us like he never met us in his life before, despite having just seen us twice before now, and says that we can go right ahead to freeing the lake legendaries if we can beat him in battle, since he's already used them up to his content and was just going to kill them anyway. His team at this point is kind of weak sauce, and to my delight, I ended up sweeping him with rollout on Boof all the way through. He then tells us that he's headed to Mount Coronet to complete his master plan and gives us a Master Ball as a reward for getting this far, I guess. We go to the room that's containing the legendaries and have to face Commander Jupiter once again, who gives me some mild trouble, but overall is dealt with pretty easily as she's not much stronger than she was at the lake. I headed up to Mount Coronet with ease, but was kind of questioning how Team Galactic got an entire battalion of dudes all the way up here through all the difficult terrain, but nonetheless reached the top for the climax of the story. Approaching, Cyrus says he's going to use the red chain he created from the lake legends to call upon Dialga to our plane of existence, and a rare pixel Pokemon cutscene occurs depicting Dialga being summoned to our location by the red chain with Cyrus monologuing over it, saying that with everything in existence gone, there's finally will be a world without strife, because he was planning on creating an entirely new world instead of working to change the present world that we live in. Before getting to fight Cyrus, I'm jumped by Commander Jupiter and Mars, but luckily Barry is finally on the scene to help out for once and finally get his revenge on the pink-haired witch that defeated him at Lake Acuity. This battle is a bit tougher than I thought it would be, but it was mostly because I was foregoing buying healing items the entire game to save up for later, and my team was kind of in shambles from the climb up here. We were first confronted by 2 Bronzors which acted as walls to the rest of the commander's teams, so out I went with Edie, who also fell since I forgot about the type disadvantage against Bronzor. I returned with Birdo to help out the war effort, and Barry's Munchlax ended up taking down one of the Bronzors eventually, leading way for Skuntank to come out. I did my best to keep Birdo helping here, but eventually switched into Shelly and was surprised to see Barry's Infernape coming out and insta-killing the Skuntank with a close combat to the face. The next out was Jupiter's Golbat, and between that and Bronzor, Barry's Infernape was taken down as well, and so was Shelly. I sent out Cheeks to help whittle down the rest of her Pokemon. Finally, it was time for the last showdown with Cyrus. I started off with Boof, hoping to get some rollout antics going, and was rather successful in beating his Honchkrow, but unfortunately his next Pokemon was the lightning quick Sneasel, who ended my rollout streak, but I had someone leagues quicker than this rodent, sending Ravy in to one-shot him with close combat. He then sent out Gyarados, who one-shotted me with Giga Impact like a nerd, forcing me to switch to Birdo and hit him with Toxic since I didn't have much to deal with his awkward typing. Next, the Crobat compelling me to switch to Edie for the type advantage, but was sadly taken down after doing a good bit of damage. I whittled him down with Birdo and mopped up with Shelly, finally felling the evil villain of the game once and for all. After the battle, Dialga remains, and Rowan says that his rampage could destroy the region if I didn't try to stop it, so I went in against the God of Time with a Pokeball and a Dream. My team was in shambles, and I had little to no help with healing items in my backpack, so I led with Cheeks using 1 Earthquake, hoping it wouldn't kill him. Lucky leaving him in the red and swiftly catching Dialga with the first Ultra Ball that I threw, which was pretty exciting as I've spent many hours in games before trying to catch the box legendary in the same state with an Ultra Ball, closing out the villain arc. Pokemon Diamond was coming to a close, but there was still the matter of defeating the last gym leader Volkner in the Pokemon League. Flint, who's a member of the Elite Four himself, approaches us as we enter the Electric City and tells us that the gym leader as of late has been kind of depressed from not having any noteworthy battles lately and asks us to help since he's heard that we're quite the noteworthy adversary. We head up to the Light Tower to consult the man himself, and he lets us know that if we don't end up beating him, that he's going to challenge the Pokemon League himself so that he could have fun with battling again, as he thinks being a gym leader is boring. The final gym of the game has a light button pushing puzzle that changes the pathing of these little islands all around the gym. It's not complex in the least bit, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad. In fact, it's one of my preferred gym puzzles. Volkner leads with his Raichu paralyzing Birdo, but eventually my Pinsir boy came out on top. He sends out Ambipom next, so I naturally consult my main man Ravy, who only needed 1 close combat to deal with the situation as usual. Luxray was next, and I decided it was about time to come in with Cheeks to clean up the rest of the gym like I knew he would, and that he did, taking down both his Luxray and Octillery with ease, nabbing us the final badge we needed. I really hate Victory Road, and I'm kind of glad they decided to remove anything similar to that in the newer entries, because it's a real hassle to have to trudge through when you just want to get to the league. Boom, flash forward through monotonous HM usage and trainer battles, and it's time for the final showdown with our rival. The final rival showdown is always my favorite fight in the game, even over the champion battle. It's the true culmination of all the work we've done up until now from the moment that we opened that briefcase. He leads with Staraptor as I lead with my Birdo, getting a Toxic on him, but eventually having to switch out to Shelly, where I get U-turned into Roserade and forced to switch out again to Ravy. After Roserade was dealt with, Floatzel came out, so I went in with Edie to see what his Woodhammer could bring to the table, and fortunately it was a one-hit KO. He finally decided to use a starter, so I said screw it and went into Cheeks, who destroyed him with Earthquake. He retaliated with Staraptor, but was defeated by the hail Edie caused after a rock slide and turned to Heracross, who didn't stand a chance to Ravi's Brave Bird. His last Pokemon was Snorlax, who I met with Boof, who had been pulling a good bit of the work throughout the game and nearly took down Snorlax with his superpower, failing at the last moment, leaving the last hit to Birdo, letting Barry know that he needs to get better before thinking about the league. I entered the door to the Elite Four, stocked on healing items and hopeful of a first try victory. Aaron the Bug Trainer starts off with a Dustox, causing me to switch into Ravy to one-shot it with Brave Bird. His next partner was Drapion, so I switched to Shelly for Mud Bomb, but he actually decided to switch into his Beautyfly last second, so I switched back as well and took care of yet another insect on my path. Drapion froze me up with Ice Fang, but my Shelly was just too sturdy to have that slow her down and finished him up. After that, it was a spooky Heracross that proved to be a bit too quick for Ravy. I tried Boof for some reason thinking he might be enough, but I just got him blasted by close combat instead. I decided to switch into Cheeks just to whittle his health down the best I could, but only got one hit before he fainted. Down to my final 3 already, I sent out Edie, who did her best but was unfortunately dropped as well. Panicking a bit, I went to Birdo and pulled off a Toxic on Heracross, and he didn't seem to have anything to deal with Birdo's typing, so I successfully stalled him out with ease. Last was Vespiquen. Using the same strategy against her, I finally came out on top against this noteworthy adversary. Next was Bertha, the ground type specialist. I led with Booth since I anticipated a pure ground or rock type to be first, but was met with Quagsire, from whom I wasn't expecting for some reason. She just protected and switched into Sudowoodo, who kinda looks like a log of poop in this game. I got it low with Boof and Edie helped, but alas, Boof was the first to fall and was followed promptly by Edie as well. I riskily sent in Ravy to mop up with Quick Attack, switching to Shelly for Golem, who was one-shotted with Surf. After that, it was Hippowdon, who was going to get the Cheeks treatment, but was surprisingly resistant to my Giga Drains, though he did eventually get sucked dry, and the rest of her team, being Whiscash and Quagsire, did not have a better time, though Quagsire wouldn't stop protecting for no reason at all. Flint was the third opponent in this gauntlet, leading with Rapidash while I went with Boof, thinking Waterfall would get me through this fine, but was surprisingly solar beamed into outer space. Though he did do some decent damage, I used swap tactics between Shelly and Edie to avoid being overly damaged by solar beams, and also removing Sunny Day with Edie's snow warning, eventually taking it down while it was up in the air with hail. I thought I could beat his Infernape with Cheeks since I beat Barry so easily, but Flint was much smarter than to just attack me with Shadow Claw and burned my entire forest with one Flare Blitz. Ravy was up and killed Infernape with a fly, causing Flint to send out Steelix. Ravy managed to take it down to 1 HP but fell, and Birdo came and cleaned it up. His next Pokemon was Lopunny, so I went with a little stall on Edie using Ingrain and Hail to chip away at her and heal myself, but was melted down by a Fire Blast. Shelly also fell to the rabbit, and Berto was the last stand. I nearly lost the run here due to being burned and resorted to using one full restore to bring Berto back from the door of death. I normally hate using items in battle because it feels like cheese, but I thought if the Elite Four had been using them against me the entire time anyway, I might as well use one too, and finally took down the fire type user Flint. The last of the 4 elites was the Psychic Pokemon Master Lucian, who's a lot stronger than he looks. I led with Birdo since he now had Crunch, and despite his weakness to Psychic, could probably do a good deal of damage before fainting. Luckily, I took his Mr. Mime down, though Birdo was heavily injured, so I sent out Ravy to deal with his Bronzong that I was dreading, since Bronzong is an absolute tank that I had no fire moves to help deal with. I thought close combat would work, but the damage proved to be minuscule, so I went in with Boof before I got Ravy too hurt, but even superpower is not enough to bring him into the yellow. Crunch on Cheeks was my last ditch effort to kill this guy, and it worked, since luckily I got a defense down on him with my first attack. He had Medicham next, so obviously Ravy was up to bat and was dealt with. Next he sent out Alakazam, which I thought would be the end of me, but ended up making some dire mistakes in move choice, allowing me to run away with the win, not even losing Berto. Last he sent out a Giraffe, which wasn't too much trouble. Elite Four defeated and Pokemon fully healed up in both HP and mostly PP. It was finally time to approach the most revered Pokemon League champion to date, Cynthia. I knew for a fact Cynthia would lead with Spiritomb because I've fought her so many times before, so I decided to lead with Berto. Berto got a good toxic off in the first turn and was surprisingly unaffected by her attacks for the most part and secured the victory against his man. Next, she was sending out Gastrodon, who obviously wanted to meet Cheeks and surprisingly survived 2 Mega Drains but was eventually taken down with ease. After that, it was time for one of her real hard hitters in my Milotic. I've had many a Nuzlocke ruined by the Serpent of the Beasts, but this time I was not Nuzlocking, so I didn't panic but lost Cheeks to an Ice Beam halfway through. Next, I tried to use Wood Hammer to finish up on Edie, but she fell as well, and so far Milotic was tearing through my team left and right. I sent out Boof and he managed to finish the job with Return and Superpower, getting this nuisance out of the way. Roserade came out next but took a Brave Bird to the face, giving way for Cynthia's legendary Lucario, and unfortunately this was the end of the road for my boys and the rest of my team getting swept by Earthquake and the prospect of a first run Elite Four challenge slipping through my fingers. After that devastating loss, I resolved to come back stronger than ever before, going on tons of suicide runs through the Elite Four to get levels and money for healing items so that I could finally defeat the champion. One trainer arc later and I entered the room with my entire team at level 55 or above, save for one, and the battle was back on. Spiritomb vs Berto was the rematch of the century. I decided to forego an early Toxic here to do some more damage with Crunch, but eventually resorted to it since I thought she would end up full restoring if I didn't. And in a way I was right, my next Crunch ended the bout. It was Gastrodon next, so I turned to Cheeks, getting a one-shot with Leaf Storm. The infamous Milotic was next, so I sent out Berto to cause Toxic since I knew that this would be a drawn-out fight. Edie was next since I didn't think she could do much to her, and luckily I was right. Edie eventually took her down with a blow from Hammer-On. The dastardly Lucario that ended our first run was next, so I sent out Ravy prepared to one-shot him with Brave Bird, but only did a bit over half, getting Aura Sphered into Oblivion. Cheeks popped out next, and despite Cynthia using a full restore to heal Lucario, he got a crit with Earthquake and took him down. Garchomp was next, and this made me anxious as I wanted to swap into Edie, but she was already a bit damaged and I didn't want to lose her, especially now, but luckily I managed to get off 3 Earthquakes and watched as her Garchomp fell to the hail simultaneously with Cheeks. Roserade was her last chance to mop me up, but I wasn't hopeful for her as I still had a few on the bench. I used Shelly to whittle her down since I knew she would die easy, but did a lot more damage than I was initially hoping, and with the final Blizzard of Oz from Eddie, I finally beat Pokemon Diamond. I have been wanting to talk about Pokemon on this channel from pretty much the beginning. After I made my first Final Fantasy video, I started playing Pokemon Blue in hopes to play the games in order from start to finish, but there was something wrong with how I felt about playing when I really wanted to play Pokemon Diamond or even Emerald the whole time I was playing Blue. I eventually just abandoned the save file even though I still have all the recordings on my computer. I think that even if I did end up making the Pokemon Blue video, I'd probably end up making a whole new save. Before this video ends, I want to take a quick moment to shout out everyone that was on the team in this playthrough, starting with Birdo, my Drapion. He kinda sucked in the beginning, but really showed his true colors in the league. My B-Barrel Boof, who proved himself to be much more than just an HM slave. Cheeks, my Torterra with a poorly spelled name. Ravy, who was honestly the MVP. Shelly the Shellos, never used Gastrodon before, but it was actually nice this time. And last but not least, my Obama Snow Edie, who came in late to the party but proved invaluable. I'm sort of thinking of doing Pokemon Platinum as a Nuzlocke since the story isn't too different from the main game, and making that a sort of trend to do as I go down the line, at least for the Pixel games that have the special editions, and once we're at the point where that stops, just doing it in the opposite title. But anyway, the script is like 10,000 words long at this point, so I should probably get out of here pretty soon. If you enjoyed this video and you have any tips or personal opinions on Pokemon Diamond and your experiences with the game, or if you just want to chat about nerd stuff with me, please leave it down in the comment section below and leave some suggestions for other games you'd like to see me talk about for future videos on this channel. I'd like to thank you all for watching. All that I ask is that if you like this video, please like and subscribe down below. I will be releasing a new video every Monday.